How many people have had a flying dream where it's like full color and you're flying along? All right, that's your astral body. And the mystics call it your astral body. But it's actually it's part and parcel woven into your physical body, but you can have experiences where it separates. And you can travel through that modality to other places, other dimensions. And this has been done for thousands of years. There's many, many accounts in the literature about people doing this. And many people will confuse that with their actual physical body because it looks very similar in shape and size. But then within that astral body is the sort of the essence of your self, your thought essence. And then within that is pure consciousness. So if you look at it, every single individual human being has folded within them all the dimensions of the cosmos. So when people say, how do I explore and find these other dimensions? I said, they're already folded within you. They're there. It's just that you just need to have someone explain that that's what that is. So anyway, so this this Skunk Works guy, the Lockheed Skunk Works, was very happy to finally figure out what happened. But then we had this discussion, and I said, you know, this has really profound implications for you understanding what's going on at Dreamland MOC. And you know what Dreamland MOC is? Okay, so I brought with me the thing I put together when Obama got elected. And the very first document in this briefing is the one from Nellis Air Force Base. You know what the public call Area 51. Nobody calls it that. And it talks about the Dreamland MOC in it, Dreamland, and all the different compartments out at that facility. And the reason there was an area called Dreamland is that when the pilots who were piloting these anti-gravity devices, and they were taking them to the edge of the crossing point of light, all right, right to the edge of going beyond the light barrier, resonantly. There is this phenomenon of beginning to dematerialize, and you find that you have shifted your body and the craft and everything in it, and it feels like a lucid dream, when you're awake in a lucid dream. And that's why it was called Dreamland, Military Operating Center, MOC. And a lot of people always wonder how they got Dreamland. Now you know. This is something that if you begin to look at, if you do an ethnography of different cultures, for example, the Aboriginals in Australia, where they have something called dream time. And I know a man who worked for ONI, the Office of Naval Intelligence and State Department. His cover was State Department, he was really ONI. And he went over there to study this. And so he went out into the outback, this was back in the 70s, I think. And he kind of embedded himself with a group of Aboriginals who were still in touch with that ability. And they were talking to him about dreams. So, you know, one night they, were in some encampment and they were very nomadic, went to sleep. And one of the members of the tribe, one of their Aboriginals the next morning said, oh, well, I had a very lucid, in the dream I met so-and-so, I don't know the person's name, and we need to walk and meet at whatever time here. And of course this guy who was a State Department / Naval Intelligence person studying this weird high strangeness didn't quite believe it. And so they started trekking, and sure enough at the exact place and time he met this person who, and they didn't have cell phones, nothing, and they just met. And he said, this is, so it was one of these things where this is their normal state. And many African tribes have described doing this, and Native American peoples, and they call them seers or visionaries. But it's really just the capability of the conscious mind to be disciplined in the dream state, sleep state, to awaken into this dream, and then be in control while you're having it. That's the lucid part, and begin to explore. And you can explore things in this world or other worlds that way. Now, really what we do when we do the Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind protocols is that we're going into deep meditation and doing it consciously. We're not going to sleep. Well, some people go to sleep because we're out till 2 in the morning. But we're doing this through a technique, a meditative technique and a protocol, which you can all use and practice. And practice makes perfect. I'll tell you, you need to practice it for it to really work effectively. But the concept is what you need to understand. How does it work? Well, if you're talking about connecting to an interstellar civilization, they may or may not be in the area and not in this linear dimension. Maybe they're dematerialized and they're hovering over the White House. Could be. Why not? Who would detect it? Nobody would detect it if it shifted far enough out of this dimension. But it could pop into view instantly. So it's not just that they're traveling faster than the speed of light. They can be shifted beyond the speed of light and be, quote, stationary, but kind of superimposed around this space, but beyond 3D space. Does that make sense? So it could be in this room. It could be anywhere. Now, the effect, it becomes something that doesn't make a lot of sense to people unless they understand the basic concepts I'm sharing now. And then you say, well, what happens when it's only partially here? So let's say there's a spacecraft and it's not quite 3D, but it's near, but it's shifting, it's bumping up against the fabric of space-time. Well, this is where you get all kinds of epiphenomenon, all kinds of other phenomena, such as electromagnetic signals coming through our systems that we detect, a sphere that floats right by us out in the desert, which happened at Joshua Tree a few years ago, stopped and we heard 4 voices speaking in the desert, in clear air, empty. We had night scopes. And then all of a sudden we took a photograph and here's this extraterrestrial we call Bijou, who's from the Andromeda galaxy, who's there waving. It's on the website, okay? That's how that happened. But it actually, so the understanding of this, it's really key to going out and doing the contact protocols. Because you're using consciousness, but you're also using thought and electromagnetic systems, and all of this is coming together in a nexus. And there can be all degrees of the manifestation or how something materializes. It can be 3D, where you really would bump into it solid, or it may look like it's 3D, but you could walk right through it. Wonderful story from Altus Air Force Base. A friend of ours who lives out in the mountains, he worked for the Air Force back in the 60s, and he was a guard at a nuclear bomb squadron out in Oklahoma. And if you read his account, it's very interesting because there was roughly a chevron or triangular shaped object that was cobalt blue, gorgeous, that came into, and they were investigating our nuclear capabilities. I think this was in 1968. I have to look it up. But it's in the testimony. You can look. But what was interesting is that he said it was translucent cobalt blue. It wasn't solid. But you could see the shape of it, but it wasn't fully like that. Does that make sense? So it moved over, and of course they have what they call the hot areas that are marked off in red. No one can go into those hot areas except the pilots for the nuclear bombers. And of course these were hot, ready to go. They were kept ready to go all the time in those days. And we still have some that are hot, ready to go. But the hot areas were, and they had sensors, electromagnetic sensors. Well, as this thing moved across that area, it set the sensors off. So even though it wasn't 3D, totally physical, visually you could see this outline of this cobalt blue ship. And it was enough in this dimension to put off electromagnetic fields that the electronic sensors went off, which ended up being a disaster because they went to a full alert and had to scramble those jets and move them off the base, which is what happened. But the craft was never 3D, fully 3D. Does this make sense? So many times people will see something and they'll go, well, I saw it, but I'm not sure. And in fact, that's how this guy approached me. I'm not sure what and I said, well, just describe it. Don't editorialize it. And he described it. I said, oh, well, I know exactly what that is. That was a craft of that shape and dimension that was still shifted, its molecular and atomic structure, resonant field was still shifted high enough that it wasn't totally 3D, but you could see the glow and outline of it, kind of like an astral body or a ghost. Cool stuff, huh? Is this too much information too quickly? Okay, so we're going to have a whole hour and a half of question and answer for later anyway, so make notes on your little tablets or whatever you want to do if you have questions that come to your mind. The reality is when we're observing ETs, their physical bodies can also do the same thing. So if you look at this ET we call Bijou that appeared at Joshua Tree National Park, we're probably going to do a week training there in April if you want to come. We go to this place, it's amazing, in the heart of this 800,000 acre park. And was that with the naked eye, nothing was seen. Now, the ears could hear 4 ETs speaking. I don't know what language they were speaking. Andromedan? I don't know. But when the person took the photo, Raven, a member of our team, took the photo, she just held her breath and had it open for 3 or 4 seconds, and here is this glowing field of energy and this being standing there, turned like this, waving at us. And on the top of his head, if you look very carefully, is what looks like a yarmulke. It's not. I don't think he's Jewish. He might be. There's a rabbi from Andromeda. No. But it's this thick. It's about this. It looks about that thick, and it's a white, and it's basically a teleportation assisting device. So it holds that field. So their physical body can phase in and out of 3D or 5D, 10D, whatever, resonantly shifting. Make sense? I'm looking around to see if I've lost everyone yet. Because understanding all of this, I'm trying to give examples of things that are really big lessons to understand when you're going to go out into the stars with your team in Largo or wherever, or California or wherever you're from. Now the other more fascinating part of this is that interstellar civilizations utilize what I call coherent thought emanating from a deep level of quiet mind that's very directional, very specific, the way we would utilize a laser and a laser disc or a fiber optic system with lasers, or a laser tracking system.